The Vega Rift was silent, the kind of silence that came only after a war that had burned too hot and too long. Black dunes stretched beneath an orange sky, and the horizon glowed with the fading ember of dying suns. Jet Dorian's shuttle cut through the haze like a blade through smoke. His scanners pulsed once, twice, then caught a faint signal, weak, erratic, flickering like a heartbeat refusing to quit. He frowned. Every part of him said to keep flying. The rift wasn't a place you stopped in, but the sound that crackled through the calm wasn't a distress beacon. It was a voice, broken, fading, and unlike anything human. "Leave me here." The transmission ended in static. Jet's jaw tightened. He'd heard plenty of cries in his years with the Frontier Fleet, but this one, it wasn't panic or pain. It was surrender. Something deep in him rebelled against that tone. He adjusted the thrusters and followed the trace toward the coordinates, the ship descending into a canyon of glassy rock. The dust shimmered with the metallic ash of old battles. Down there, half buried under a fractured Dravak scout ship, was a shape, slender, motionless, not human. Jet powered down his engines and stepped out into the wind. His boots sank into powdered rust. The air tasted of iron and smoke. As he neared, the body shifted, a faint rise in the chest, a sign of life so fragile it almost wasn't there. She was unlike anything he'd seen. Skin pale as lunar frost, veins glowing faint blue beneath the surface, and hair streaked with silver dust. Her armor was split open across the ribs, a crystalline plate shattered inward. She looked like she had fallen from another world, and maybe she had. When he knelt beside her, her lips parted. "Don't," she whispered, her voice thin as vapor. "Don't help me, human. Let me die here." The word human carried both venom and fear. It made his pulse quicken. Jet hesitated only a second before tearing open a med pack. "Yeah, sorry," he muttered, his tone dry, "but I'm bad at taking orders from corpses." He pressed a sealant over the wound. Her body jerked in pain, breath catching in her throat. The layer of alien cloth tore beneath his fingers. And that's when he saw it. Burned into her skin, glowing faintly through the dust, was a symbol no human could mistake. The sigil of the Dravak Empire, seared by plasma into her side. The mark of Earth's oldest enemy. Jet froze, hand hovering over the wound. He had seen that mark on war trophies, on corpses in the frontier trenches, on the hulls of burning cities. The Dravak didn't just fight, they erased. He could have stepped back then, could have left her to the desert and told himself it was justice. But she wasn't like the soldiers he'd fought. She was shaking, breath shallow, her eyes opening just enough for him to see the color, a strange, iridescent hue between violet and gold. Not rage, not arrogance, just exhaustion so deep it stripped everything else away. Her whisper broke again. "Please, just let the rift take me." He looked at the cracked sky, then at her. "Yeah, no. You're not dying on my watch." He slipped his arms under her and lifted. She was lighter than she looked, bones delicate, frame trembling against his chest. Her blood glowed faintly against his sleeve, leaving streaks like starlight. When he carried her toward the shuttle, he caught sight of her ship, a black craft half-eaten by fire, the Dravak emblem slashed across its hull. Around it lay the scorched remains of mechs, each one burned from the inside out, as if the power core had imploded. "What the hell happened to you?" he muttered. Inside the shuttle, the AI flickered to life. "Warning," it said, "detected biosignature, Dravak species, hostile classification level, 7 override protocol," Jet ordered. "Medical quarantine only." The AI hesitated. "Captain, this may violate." "I said override." He laid her on the med bench, sealed the doors, and started the engines. Outside, the wind screamed across the canyon, erasing their footprints. The Vega Rift swallowed secrets fast. He checked her vitals. 2 hearts, 1 slowing, 1 fighting. Radiation burns across her ribs, plasma laceration on her thigh. And that brand, that was no accident. It looked ritualistic. The edges of the burn were clean, deliberate. Punishment. "Who did this to you?" he murmured. Her eyelids fluttered. For a second, she seemed to see him, not as an enemy, but as something she couldn't quite name. "You should have left me," she rasped. "If they find you with me, they'll burn you too." He gave a crooked smile. "Good thing I stopped caring what they burn." The engines roared to life and the shuttle lifted off the canyon floor. The stars stretched above, cold and indifferent. For hours, Jet flew through the rift's empty corridors, silence pressing against the hull. He could hear the faint sound of her breathing, uneven, struggling. Every so often she twitched as if fighting ghosts in her sleep. The monitor blinked red, then steady, then red again. At one point, her hand moved toward his arm, instinctively, unconsciously, and he froze. Her skin was colder than metal, her touch trembling, but there was something fragile in it, something that felt human. He didn't pull away. Instead, he adjusted the heating field around the med bay, the warmth curling through the air like a sigh. Through the viewport, the storm cleared. Beyond the rift, a pale moon rose, one of the mining colonies long abandoned after the war. He set a course. The moment he touched down, the silence inside the ship deepened. He leaned against the console, staring at her still form. That brand on her hip glowed faintly beneath the light, pulsing like a curse. The kind of mark that meant traitor. Jet had seen soldiers branded for less, but no one survived long with the Dravok sigil burned into their flesh. Whoever she was, she crossed a line that even her own empire couldn't forgive. He poured a ration of water into a tin cup and crouched beside her again. "Drink," he said, lifting her head slightly. Her eyes flicked open. For a heartbeat, he saw confusion there, then defiance. "Why am I?" "Because you're still breathing," he said simply. "Figure that means the universe isn't done with you yet." She swallowed, the glow in her veins dimming slightly. "You don't understand. I'm not one of your refugees. Didn't say you were. You should hate me. Maybe. Haven't decided yet." Something flickered in her eyes, almost a smile, broken before it could form. "You're strange, human." "Yeah," he said, turning toward the console. "I get that a lot." Behind him, she whispered something in her own language, soft syllables that shimmered like music through static. His translator couldn't parse it, but he caught a single word repeated twice. Later, he would learn it meant forgive. Outside, the moonlight bled across the dunes. Inside, her breathing steadied. For the first time in months, Jet felt something stir inside the walls he'd built. Curiosity, maybe. Or something deeper, more dangerous. He looked down at her again, at the strange beauty of a creature born from the stars, and muttered, "Guess we're both strays now." The engines cooled, the hum fading to quiet. In that silence, he realized he'd just done something no human pilot would ever confess to. He had rescued the enemy. But somewhere inside, beneath the scars and the cynicism, a thought refused to die. Maybe mercy wasn't weakness after all. Maybe, just maybe, it was rebellion. And as the rift winds howled beyond the hull, a question echoed through his mind like a drumbeat from another life. What kind of being carries the enemy's mark and still begs for mercy? When the twin moons rose over the barren mining colony, the light fell pale and cold through the fractured cockpit. Jet sat alone at the control deck, the hum of auxiliary systems echoing like a tired heartbeat. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, had seen better years. It groaned whenever the wind scraped against its hull. He should have been sleeping, but his mind refused to shut down. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the sigil burned into her skin, the mark of the Dravok. He had fought them for most of his life. He'd seen what their fleets could do, how they burned through planets like rot through bone. Yet now one of them lay behind the med bay door, breathing under his care. The air recyclers clicked softly, and he thought he could almost hear her pulse through the ship's metal ribs. Jet stood, walked toward the med bay, and stopped at the threshold. The door hissed open. The alien girl, Letty, he decided to call her, though he didn't know if that was her name, was half awake, eyes open but distant. The bandages he'd wrapped were faintly luminous under the ship's light. Her veins still glowed, dim but alive. She looked up when he entered. "You should have left me," she said again, her voice hoarse. "You keep saying that," he replied. "You ever think maybe I'm not good at following instructions?" Her gaze wandered across the room. The walls were dull metal, the shelves cluttered with human med kits and broken tech. This place smells like rust. Yeah, Jet said, dropping into a chair opposite her. That's how you know it's home. She blinked, confused, maybe even amused for a second before the pain returned to her expression. Why did you save me? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because you were dying. That's not a reason, she murmured. It's enough for me. Silence settled between them. Only the low hum of the reactor filled the space. The wind outside howled through the ruins, carrying the ghosts of old battles. Jet could still see the scars of the war from orbit, blackened craters, skeletal towers, endless dust. Letty turned her head slightly, watching the faint shimmer of energy pulsing through the transparent tube above her bed. This world is dead, she said softly. Your kind killed it. He met her eyes without flinching. Maybe. But your kind started the fire that shut her up. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she sighed, a sound that was more weary than angry. We both lost something out there. Yeah, he said quietly. We did. She studied him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. You're different from the others. I'm retired, he said dryly. Makes a man strange. Her lips curved slightly. The expression was small, fragile, but real. He got up, crossed to the storage locker, and brought out a ration pack. You need to eat. It's not gourmet, but it keeps the bones upright. She looked at the gray paste in the metal bowl and frowned. Humans eat this? When we're desperate. And now? He shrugged. Guess we're desperate. She hesitated, then reached for the bowl. The way her fingers moved, elegant but trembling, made him realize just how fragile she really was. The Dravok had always seemed untouchable in propaganda broadcasts. Tall, perfect, merciless. But this one, this Letty, was as broken as any human survivor. When she finished, she pushed the bowl away. You shouldn't trust me, she said quietly. Good news, he replied. I don't. That earned him a soft sound, half laugh, half sigh. He turned toward the viewport, staring at the endless desert under the moonlight. He could feel her eyes on him, weighing something invisible. Inside her mind, thoughts twisted like tangled wires. She had lied to him. She'd told him she was captured, tortured, left for dead. That much was true, but not the reason. The truth was darker. She had worked for the Dravok High Corps, a scientist designing bioweapons meant to cripple human colonies. She had believed in the cause once, until she saw what it really did. The day the weapon detonated over Luna Colony, she watched a blue planet burn from orbit, millions gone in a single pulse. Her equations had killed them. The guilt had been her only companion since. When she tried to destroy her research, the Dravok branded her traitor and hunted her across the stars. That mark on her body was her punishment, a brand that screamed shame. Now, lying in a human ship, she couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. He would hate her. He should. Your name, Jet said suddenly, pulling her from her thoughts. What is it? She hesitated. Letty. He nodded once. Good. Saves me trouble inventing one. You were going to name me? Didn't want to call you Hey, you all day. Something warm flickered in her chest. She wasn't used to humor. Not from a human, not from anyone. He leaned back against the wall, arms crossed. Rest now. We move at first light. Where? Outpost Ardent. Closest place with med gear that actually works. Her expression tightened. That's a human settlement. You noticed. They'll kill me if they see what I am. Then they won't see. She stared at him, trying to read his tone. You'd risk that? He looked away, jaw clenching. I've already risked worse. The lights dimmed to night mode. Outside, dust storms crawled across the horizon. Inside, she watched him check his weapons, his repairs, his wounds. Routine movements of a man who'd spent his life surviving on instinct. Something in the rhythm of his actions calmed her. She wanted to sleep, but couldn't. Every time her eyes shut, she saw the faces of the dead. When Jet finally spoke again, his voice came low, almost gentle. You know, back during the war, we used to say the Dravok didn't feel anything. No fear, no pain, no love, she swallowed. And now? He met her gaze. Now I'm not so sure. He left her with that thought and stepped out into the corridor. The door sealed behind him. Letty lay there, eyes open to the ceiling. His words echoed in her head, louder than she expected. Not so sure. She turned her head, staring at the reflection of herself in the glass panel beside the bed. The glow beneath her skin pulsed with every heartbeat, like a reminder of everything she'd lost. For the first time since the war ended, she didn't feel completely hollow. That terrified her more than the brand. By morning, faint sunlight filtered through the cracked windows of the colony outpost. Jet was already in the cockpit, running diagnostics. Letty sat in the co-pilot's seat, wrapped in a thermal cloak. He glanced at her once, but said nothing. "Coordinates locked," the ship's AI reported. "Then let's see if this heap still remembers how to fly," Jet muttered, fingers brushing across the controls. The engines roared, dust billowed, and the horizon's edge rose into the sky. Through the glass, Letty watched the dying moon shrink behind them. "It's strange," she said softly. "Your worlds feel heavier than ours." "That's gravity," he said. "Keeps you from floating away." "Maybe that's why humans never stop fighting," she murmured. "You can't stand being grounded." He glanced sideways at her. "You think we fight because we hate?" She looked at him, her voice barely audible. "No, because you care too much." That silenced him. He didn't have a reply for that. As the ship pierced the cloud layer, the stars opened before them. Cold, endless, glittering like shards of glass. Jet set the autopilot and leaned back. "You get some rest. Outpost isn't far." Letty hesitated. "Jet." "Yeah? If they find out who I am, what I am, don't protect me." He turned his head, his expression unreadable. "Not making promises." Her throat tightened. "You were impossible." "That's one of my better qualities." For the first time, she laughed. Quiet, uncertain, but real. He didn't look at her, but a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Outside, the stars glided by in silence. Inside, two fugitives, one human, one alien, shared the fragile stillness between battles. Each carried secrets heavy enough to drown a world. Each pretending not to see how close they were. They're already drifting towards something more dangerous than war itself, trust. And somewhere in the hum of the ship, a quiet thought rose like a whisper neither of them would admit out loud. How long can a lie survive when the heart wants to believe the enemy? The outpost rose from the desert like the skeleton of a fallen titan. Twisted towers of steel jutted from dunes of amber dust, their lights flickering weakly under the planet's red sun. Outpost Ardent, the last trade station on the edge of nowhere. Jet's shuttle descended through the static haze, landing gear crunching against rusted plating. The smell of fuel and ozone filled the cabin. He powered down the thrusters, then turned to the passenger seat. Letty sat wrapped in her hooded cloak, eyes hidden beneath the shadow. "You remember what I said," he told her quietly. "No talking, no glowing, no looking at anyone too long." Her lips curved faintly. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't." The ramp hissed open, releasing a wave of scorching air. The sounds of generators, shouts, and clanging machinery rolled over them like a tide. Jet stepped out first, his long coat brushing against his boots. The air was thick with sand and suspicion. Outpost Ardent wasn't home to anyone, just traders, smugglers, mercenaries, people who survived by not asking questions. But even here, curiosity was a disease that spread fast. Letty followed, walking with her head bowed, the fabric of the cloak dulling the faint shimmer beneath her skin. Around them, humans bartered with synthetic beings, drones hauled crates, and the scent of oil mixed with the dry spice of alien dust. Jet moved with purpose toward the supply depot. He didn't glance back, but he could feel the eyes on them, the way the crowd subtly parted, murmurs rising, some glances lingering too long. It wasn't Letty's fault. There was something about her presence that drew attention even when she tried to disappear. Inside the depot, the air was cooler, filtered. Shelves of fuel cells and med packs lined the walls. The vendor, a thick-set man with mechanical implants glinting beneath his skin, looked up from his register. "Dorian," he grunted. "Didn't think you'd crawl out of the rift alive." "Guess I'm hard to kill," Jet said, sliding a data chip across the counter. Need med foam, thermal filters, and clean rations. Priority 1. The vendor inserted the chip, his cybernetic eye flickering. You bringing guests now? Just a mechanic. The man's gaze shifted toward the cloaked figure behind Jet. Doesn't look like one. Neither do I, Jet said, voice flat. That ended the conversation. While the vendor packed the supplies, Letty wandered a few steps away, scanning a wall of tools. She moved carefully, aware of every breath, every shadow. The air smelled of iron and grease, a strangely comforting blend. For a moment, she almost felt invisible. Then a voice behind her cut through the quiet like a blade. I know that scent. She froze. The sound was low, rasping, old as hate. She turned slowly. A tall man stepped from the corner, half his face covered in scar tissue, one eye replaced by a glowing implant. He wore the insignia of the Frontier Reclaimers, a militia infamous for hunting remnants of the Dravok War. His single eye burned with recognition. Show me your face, he said. Letty didn't move. You're mistaken. But the man's lip curled. I never forget a traitor's perfume. He reached forward and yanked back her hood. Light spilled across her face. The faint alien glow, the shimmer of her irises. Gasps rippled through the depot. Dravak, someone hissed. The scarred man, Kalen Stroud, Jet recognized him too late, snarled. You've got to be joking. You brought that here? Jet's hand went instinctively to his belt. Let her go. Kalen laughed, harsh and cruel. You don't know who she is, do you? That's no stray. That's the engineer who built the pulse cannon that turned Luna Colony into glass. The room erupted in noise, shouts, curses, the metallic click of rifles being armed. Letty's breath caught, every face around her twisted into disgust or fear. Jet stepped forward, blocking the line of fire. Lower your weapons. Step aside, Captain, Kalen growled. You of all people should know what she deserves. Maybe she does, Jet said evenly, but not from you. Kalen spat on the floor. You defend a monster? I defend my crew, Jet replied. And right now, she's under my protection. The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. A murmur swept through the crowd. No one moved, waiting to see who would break first. Then Kalen did. He drew his plasma revolver. The barrel gleamed under the depot light. Then you die with her. Before he could aim, Jet's hand flashed. The butt of his pistol slammed into Kalen's wrist, sending the weapon clattering across the floor. A shout went up. Panic ignited. Someone fired. Blue light streaked through the air, scorching a line across the wall. Vove! Jet barked. Letty ducked behind a crate as the depot exploded into chaos. Shelves toppled. Containers burst. Smoke filled the air. Jet fired twice, hitting the ceiling supports. Metal crashed down, blocking the door. Back exit, he shouted. Letty sprinted after him, cloak torn, lungs burning. The corridor twisted like a maze of steel veins. Sirens wailed. Behind them, Kalen's men cursed, pounding on the debris. They burst into the open street. Traitors dove for cover as energy bolts cut through the dust. Jet grabbed Letty's arm and pulled her behind a derelict shuttle. Why didn't you tell me? He snapped, breath ragged. She looked at him, eyes wide with fear. Would it have changed anything? Damn right it would have. A shot grazed the edge of the shuttle, molten sparks spraying their faces. Save the argument, he growled. Run. They dashed toward the landing pad, boots slamming against metal. Drones swarmed from above, their red optics flashing. Jet fired at one, hitting its thruster. It spiraled out of control and smashed into the ground. Jet, Letty shouted, pointing ahead. 3 armored guards blocked their path. He drew his sidearm, crouched, and fired 3 controlled bursts. 2 dropped instantly. The third rushed forward, swinging a shock baton. Jet sidestepped him and slammed his elbow into the man's throat and sent him sprawling. Letty stared, stunned. Humans weren't supposed to move that fast. Don't look so shocked, he grunted. We learn quick. They reached the ship just as more drones appeared. The ramp lowered, hydraulics screaming. Letty stumbled aboard, pressing her hand to her side. Jet followed, firing one last time before the ramp sealed shut. The engines roared to life, throwing up a storm of dust. Energy blasts struck the hull, rocking the cabin. Hold on, Jet shouted. The horizon's edge lifted off, cutting through the storm like a wounded hawk. Outside, the outpost shrank beneath them, lights fading into fire. Inside the cockpit, the silence that followed was worse than the noise. Letty sat trembling, her cloak burned at the edges. Jet's knuckles were white against the controls. After a long moment, she whispered, "He wasn't lying." He didn't answer. She stared at her reflection in the viewport, at the faint glow pulsing beneath her skin. "I built the weapon," she said, her voice cracking. "I thought it would end the war. I didn't know what they'd do with it. I thought, stop." Her words died. He looked at her then, eyes hard as forged steel. "You killed people I knew." "I know it," she whispered. "Then why should I keep you alive?" She didn't flinch. "Because I'm trying to make it right." He stared at her for a long, painful second. The engine's hum filled the silence between them. Finally, he exhaled through his teeth. "You picked the wrong pilot to lie to, Letty." "I didn't lie to you," she said softly. "Not about the things that matter." Something in her tone made him pause. It wasn't pleading, it was acceptance, the kind that comes from carrying too much guilt for too long. He leaned back, gaze drifting to the endless stars ahead. "We're heading to the outer sectors. If anyone tracks us, they'll find a trail full of ghosts." She swallowed hard. "Why help me after this?" His voice came quiet, raw. "Because I don't know what else to do anymore." Outside, the stars blurred as the ship jumped to hyperspace. Inside, two fugitives sat in the hollow calm between confession and consequence. Neither spoke. Neither dared to. The galaxy stretched before them, vast, merciless, and waiting. And somewhere in that infinite dark, one question lingered like a slow-burning star. When the universe brands someone unforgivable, can a single human's faith rewrite their fate? Letty stood behind him, wrapped in the pale glow of the reactor core. The silence between them had grown sharp enough to bleed. She wanted to speak, but didn't know which words could heal what her truth had broken. Every vibration of the ship felt like a heartbeat counting down to something inevitable. Jet finally broke the silence. "I sent a signal," he said. She stiffened. "To who?" "Old contact. Frontier relay. I need repairs, fuel, ammo." Her voice wavered. "They'll track it. The drawback will come." "Good," he said flatly. "I've been meaning to return a favor." She turned away, gripping the edge of a bulkhead. "You're angry. You noticed. I didn't ask you to save me. Doesn't change the fact that I did." Her chest tightened. The words hurt more than any weapon. "Then let me make it right." "How?" he demanded, spinning toward her. "By confessing to crimes I can't undo? By reminding me what your weapon did to my world?" She met his eyes, unflinching, desperate. "By finishing what I started. The drawback are building another pulse core. I know where. Let me destroy it." He stared at her for a long, frozen heartbeat. "And why should I believe you now?" "Because it's the only way I can live with what I am," she whispered. Something in her voice cracked through his armor. He looked away, jaw tightening. "Coordinates." She projected a faint hologram, an orbital map marked with crimson rings. "It's here. A derelict cruiser in deadlight reach. The new core is hidden inside its remains." "Of course it's deadlight," he muttered. "Only suicidal fools go near that graveyard." "Then I'll go alone." He shut off the console and rose. "Not happening." Her eyes widened. "You'd help me after?" He cut her off. "Don't make me repeat myself. You brought this mess to my doorstep. I'll see it finished." The engines ignited and the stars stretched into spears of light. Hours later, the cruiser appeared out of the dark, a mountain of black metal drifting through the void. Fractured decks hung open like the ribs of a corpse. Lightning storms flickered inside the nebula surrounding it. Letty's pulse quickened. She could feel the echoes of her past inside that ship. The screaming data streams, the laboratories where she'd built death disguised as salvation. "This is it," she said softly. Jet nodded once. "Then let's end it." He brought the shuttle alongside a ruptured hangar. The hull groaned as magnetic locks engaged. Air hissed. The doors split open. Cold vapor rushed in, curling like breath from a dead world. Jet loaded his rifle, checked the power cell, and strapped him on his sidearm. Letty adjusted the containment seals on her armor. When their helmets clicked shut, their reflections met in the glass. Two exiles bound by guilt and stubborn defiance. They stepped into the wreck. Inside, silence ruled. Dust floated in the stale air, glittering like frozen time. Burned consoles lined the walls. Every corridor was a grave. As they moved deeper, faint blue lights flickered. Drawback drones dormant until now. Their sensors blinked awake at the presence of intruders. "Company," Jet said. Letty lifted her wrist. Energy flared from her gauntlet, frying the nearest drone before it could transmit. "They know we're here." "Then we move fast." They pressed on, descending through hollow decks until they reached the central chamber. In the heart of the ship hung the new pulse core, a sphere of shifting energy, throbbing like a living heart. Wires extended from it, feeding into reactors that hummed with restrained fury. Letty's breath hitched. "It's almost complete." Jet studied the readouts. "How big?" "Twice the yield of the Luna weapon." He exhaled slowly. "Hell." Her hands trembled as she approached the core's console. "I can destabilize it, but once I start, it'll trigger a cascade. You'll have minutes to escape." "You mean we'll have minutes," he said. She shook her head. "If I leave, the failsafe stays locked. Someone has to stay connected." "Not happening." "Jet, no." Their argument died when a metallic echo rang through the chamber. A deep, guttural voice followed. "Latara Vin." She froze. Only one person used her full name that way. From the shadows emerged a tall Dravak commander, armor glinting with crimson veins of light. His face was marked with ritual scars. "You stole from the and sided with animals. You disgrace your kind." Letty's voice was steady but low. "I built your weapon. I know what it cost. I'm ending it." The commander raised a plasma halberd. "Then you'll die with it." Jet stepped in between them. "Over my dead body." The commander smiled. "That can be arranged." The fight exploded like thunder. Energy arcs clashed across the room. Jet fired, shots ricocheting off shields. The drawback swung, slicing through a console, sparks showering. Letty hurled an energy pulse, the blast rocking the floor. The core pulsed faster, responding to the chaos. Warnings flared across the walls. "Letty!" Jet shouted. "It's overloading!" She ran to the control pillar, fingers flying across holographic panels. "I can collapse it from inside the matrix. Keep him off me." "On it." Jet ducked under a strike, rolled, and fired point blank into the commander's chest. The plasma seared through armor. The alien roared, swinging again. The blade caught Jet's shoulder, tearing metal and flesh. He staggered but didn't fall. The human's resilience shocked the drawback. "You fight like a creature that refuses extinction." "Exactly what I am," Jet hissed, slamming his knife into the alien's throat. The commander collapsed, choking on black fire. Jet turned. Letty's body glowed with blinding light, tendrils of energy weaving around her arms. The core screamed like a dying star. "Disconnect!" he yelled. She shook her head, voice breaking. "If I stop, it resets." "Letty, go!" He didn't move. He crossed the chamber, ignoring the heat, the collapsing metal, the pain. The air shimmered with radiation. When he reached her, he gripped her shoulders. "Don't do this alone," he said. She looked up at him through the light, tears cutting through the grime on her cheeks. "You can't save me this time." He smiled faintly. "Watch me." Before she could argue, he linked his suit to hers. Energy surged through both of them, circuits screaming. The core's glow fractured, splitting into spirals of white and blue. The ship shook apart. Outside, the horizon's edge registered a power spike of impossible scale. A moment later, the cruiser erupted, a sun blooming in the dark. When the light faded, silence returned to the void. Wreckage drifted slowly across the nebula. Amid it, a single emergency pod tumbled through space, its beacon weak but steady. Inside, Jet stirred, gasping for air. Across from him, Letty lay still, her skin dim, the glow nearly gone. He reached for her hand. "Hey, stay with me." Her eyes fluttered open. "You didn't listen." "Never do." A faint smile touched her lips. "You humans never surrender. That's our charm." He pressed a stim patch against her wrist. Her pulse steadied, slow but real. They floated there, adrift among the remains of two wars, the one they'd fought and the one they'd survived. Hours passed before rescue signals pinged from a nearby patrol. As the pod was pulled into the docking bay of a neutral station, Letty looked out at the distant stars. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Jet rested his head back, exhaustion etched into his voice. "Now we start over." She turned to him, eyes luminous again, faint but alive. "Gather?" He nodded once. "If you'll have me." She reached out, her hand resting over his heart. "I already do." Later, when they walked out onto the deck of the station, the dawn light of a new world spread across the horizon. The air smelled clean, untouched by war. Beside the railing, Jet placed two helmets, their armor scarred, scorched, but whole side by side. Neither spoke. Words weren't needed. The gesture said everything. In the reflection of the glass, two silhouettes stood against the rising sun, one human, one alien. Both survivors, both changed. Some wounds never heal, but some become maps for those who refuse to stay lost. The narrator's voice, soft and deliberate, rose like the wind across the stars. A person's past doesn't always vanish, but courage, real courage, isn't about fighting enemies. It's about forgiving them. And as the light spilled across their faces, the universe seemed, for a single fragile heartbeat, almost merciful.